Call the meeting to order. This is the August 23rd, 2016 meeting of the Town Planning and Zoning Commission of the Town of Fairfield. First item on our agenda, the meeting minutes from July 26, 2016.
I'll move to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Barrett, second by Commissioner Alessi. Everybody have a copy of that?
Yep.
I didn't see any issues, any other changes, questions. Ready to vote? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? The minutes are adopted unanimously. Next item is 75 Senior Place, request of Attorney Christopher Russo for a 90-day extension for filing of a final subdivision map, second extension.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, this is a two-lot subdivision that was approved on March the 8th. This commission previously approved the first extension. This is the second and last extension available for recording this map. As the saga continues, there's a purchase of state land that's required to make this go, and they need some time to get that deal together.
Okay. And it is as of right.
Mm-hmm.
Very good.
Make a motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Alessi,
Second.
second by Commissioner Barrett. It is as of right. Anybody have any questions? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? The extension is granted unanimously. Next item is 2164 Fairfield Beach Road, referral pursuant to Section 8-24 of the Connecticut General Statutes pertaining to selling a piece of town property.
Okay, you've got a report here from Brian Carey, the Conservation Director, along with some attachments, including the RFP that went out for bids. This is a piece of property that the town acquired from a tax foreclosure many years ago. It's about 870 feet. It's 20 feet wide by a little over 40 feet in depth. If you're familiar with Fairfield Beach Road, if you go near the end, all the way down towards the end, right before the turnaround, 3 parcels prior to the turnaround is this piece. There's presently a storm sewer pipe on it. The history behind this is there's a brand new house that was built adjacent to this, and the owner of that property was seeking to purchase it. So it went out to bid, and he was ultimately not the successful purchaser, however, but somebody across the street was the successful bidder, and they were looking to occupy it for off-street parking, and those lots are pretty tiny down there. So it's 871 feet. It's not a building lot. In effect, the conditions of sale, if you look at page 3 of 7 in the RFP, bullet points 12 and 13, the potential buyer of the site is required to file a proper drainage easement, allowing the town's existing drainage infrastructure to remain or be increased as might be needed in the future. And 13 is there's a restrictive covenant has to be placed on the land records either by the town or the potential purchaser that prohibits any future construction of improvements on the site other than those required for minimal landscaping or surface parking. So that's really the limit of the use of the property to any successful purchaser. Is the adjoining property owners was just looking, because it was kind of an unkept piece of land, he was just looking to acquire it to maintain it as part of his landscaping. The other potential purchasers looking to use it for off-street parking. There's no projected future use. The town will maintain its right to maintain that sewer or the drainage pipe there, and that is the proposal. This, pursuant to the statute, ultimately the RTM has to approve this. Your opinion on this is advisory to them as to whether you think there's any planning implications here, either a favorable or unfavorable recommendation. An unfavorable recommendation result in the requirement of a 2/3 vote of the RTM rather than a simple majority to sell it. I'm happy to try to answer any questions you might have.
Very good. So the motion which should be made is either to report favorably on the recommendation or unfavorably.
Correct.
Okay. So, just looking at Commissioner Ford, we have all regulars, and Commissioner Ford is on for Commissioner Noonan.
Correct.
All right, very good. So you're participating. Okay. Very good. Can I have a motion?
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move that we make a positive referral to the RTM on this property.
Okay, favorable recommendation.
Favorable.
Commissioner Barrett has moved to make a favorable recommendation.
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Alessi. Commissioner Barrett?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see any use for the town of this property. I don't see a lot of planning implications. I think, as far as I can see, they've got that restrictive covenant, so we really know what it's going to be used for. It's either be landscaping or surface parking.
Right.
I don't, I mean, I think we would make a negative if we thought the town should keep the property because we see some town use for it, but I'm not really seeing one, so I think selling it is okay. I don't know.
Yeah. I agree. It's a small parcel. We're going to be able to continue to use it for the purpose that we have, and I don't see any reason to report unfavorably. So. Anyone else have any comments? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay. The motion to report favorably was approved unanimously. Next item in new applications to recommend a public hearing. 901 Kings Highway, special exception application of Calvin United Church to establish a daycare facility in an existing residence in the Design Commercial District.
This is an application familiar to you. It was denied without prejudice a couple meetings ago. They've made some revisions to the site plan, and they're back for a new review, and we will schedule this as soon as our schedule permits, but it requires a new recommendation hearing.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to move to the public hearing.
Motion by Commissioner Alessi,
Second.
second by Commissioner Francis.
Just for informationally, the site plan now eliminates any encroachment on the state property, and they've got a better blown-up version of the play area defining the square footage and access to it. So those were the issues that I think that this commission was looking to clarify.
Excellent. Any other comments, questions? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Move to public hearing unanimously. Next item is old business, 105 French Street. Special exception application of Michael Butler for a rooftop deck in the Beach District.
This was heard last time. It's a house that was elevated or newly constructed and finished. They are looking to do a rooftop deck. It's 40% of the area of the roof. There was some confusion during the hearing as to the actual height of this structure. Our regulations permit a 30-foot height and for a flat roof structure that's measured to the roof deck. There is five additional feet of height permitted here because of the requirement for the flood elevation. In the roof deck, height proposed here is 34 feet, so it's 1 foot less than the maximum, so it complies with our height requirement. Notice was provided to all adjacent owners or those within 200 feet. We did not get any input from any of those folks at the hearing.
Very good.
Make a motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Alessi,
I'll second that.
second by Commissioner McAleese. Commissioner Alessi?
It meets all our requirements. I think that might be a little bit too high, but it's within our regulations, so I am going to vote to approve it.
Thank you. Commissioner Francis?
Commissioner Alessi, weren't you concerned about it having, did it have spindles on the deck as opposed to ever being
The railing can't be
solid?
included. We discussed this, the railing that they're putting on there is not included in that. That was worked out.
Right.
It's not included in the height calculation.
Not
Yeah.
included.
Not included in the height calculation, and just for clarity, the railing that is on the site plan is the railing that we're approving. So,
Which is spindles.
Yeah, but it does meet the code.
right. Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else have any comments? No? Okay. Ready to vote? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? The Application is approved unanimously. Next item is compliances, 2480 Black Rock Turnpike. Compliance application of Russell Dancho to establish a bakery in a portion of an existing building in the Design Commercial District.
This is White Birch Plaza, which is the northerly end of the commercial district on Black Rock Turnpike, an L-shaped building. It's got the Donut Inn amongst other tenants. On the first floor, there's an existing card store, Card Smart, that's leaving. They're looking to occupy the space. It's about 850 feet. They're further down Black Rock Turnpike. Presently, we're looking to move into this center. Bakeries are called out as different uses than general retail use, so it is a change in use from retail to bakery. They're not proposing any seating. The parking calcs are the same, so there's no increase in the need for parking. So it's about an 850 square foot change from retail to a bakery in the White Birch Plaza.
And a permitted use under...
And a permitted use, yes, sir. It's changed from one permitted use to another.
Very good. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Francis. Second by Commissioner Ford. Any comments? Commissioner Francis?
Seems like a good use of the property, and it complies with our regulations. So I'm glad to see another business filling in so quickly.
Excellent. I agree. This is about as straightforward as it gets. Any other comments? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? The compliance is approved unanimously. Next item is the public hearing, Plan of Conservation and Development Update, proposal of the Town Plan and Zoning Commission to update the Plan of Conservation and Development. Yeah. I'll take one. Yeah.
You did not print that out at home. It's okay. Thank you. Pretty colorful. Sure. Oops, sorry. Yeah. Anybody else need one? One more?
Good evening. For the record, my name is Joe Devonchuk. I'm the Planning and Zoning Director, or as known to some of you, the guy behind the big box. That's me. What I'd like to do really quick is just give you a brief history and overview of where we got to where we are now, and just give you another overview or description of where we're going to go. One of the things I will mention here, and I know the Commission has mentioned this before in some of our planning meetings, is this is not the completion of this process. What it does is kind of bundles a lot of the work that the Commission has done to this point and updates the document not only with the first portion of the document with the new census information and otherwise, but also includes two important portions of the plan that we have already amended and approved that had to do with the Commerce Drive area and also the pedestrian bike master plan. Just really quick for the record, I'm just going to read what the notice was in the paper. Proposal of the Planning and Zoning Commission to update the Plan of Conservation and Development. The first phase of this process is to present a comprehensive new document that fully updates the first section of the plan regarding community conditions, demographics, housing statistics, land use, and transportation systems, including relevant portions of the Fairfield Bicycle and Pedestrian Plan. Again, I think for the record, I should kind of give you a brief overview of the legal requirements here. As required by the town's charter and authorized by the Connecticut State statutes, the Town Plan and Zoning Commission first adopted in 1960 a plan of conservation and development, which at that point was known as a master plan. This POD was then totally revised in 1979, and then a comprehensive update was also taken up, and again, the document was completely revised, and that was done and approved in 2000. Since that time, the commission, as I mentioned, planning efforts have been underway to advance various initiatives such as areas around the Fairfield Metro train station, the Commons Drive station area, section 11.3.11, and this update was approved in 2011. This current draft includes data, as I mentioned before, acquired from various sources such as the 2008 to 2012 American Community Survey, the 2010 U.S. Census, and the ESRI Business Analysis, a nationally recognized provider of business and marketing data. This comprehensive new document fully updates the first section of the PODC regarding community conditions, demographics, housing statistics, land, and transportation systems, and includes section 1.7.15, the Fairfield Bicycle and Pedestrian Master Plan, and as I mentioned, incorporates the Commerce Drive Area Plan adopted in 2011. This draft, the 2016 draft, maintains the structure and format of the previous version of the plan. As I also mentioned, once this update is approved, the next step will be the examination of the development goals and policies in the second and third sections of our current POCD. This will be done through a series of targeted meetings and can take the form of public hearings, open forums for the 11 planning areas identified in our plan, and I'll just list those for the record. Greenfield Hill, Strathfield, Holland Hill, Grassmere, Tunxus Hill, Hoydens Hill, Sant Mortar, Black Rock Turnpike, Southport, Mill Plain, Shore area, Center area, and as I mentioned, the Commerce Drive area. The commission will seek input from the residents and representatives of these areas to help determine which goals and policies remain relevant, whether changes in policy should be made, and what additional goals and policies may be appropriate for future guidance to the town's development. Advance notice will be given to the public, and the commission will solicit active involvement with the Office of Economic Development, RTM members representing their constituents, other towns and boards and commissions in the town and neighborhood, and homeowners associations throughout the town. As each planning area is completed, the commission's intent is to update that section of the POCD. The commission anticipates this current draft that we're reviewing tonight, the 2016 PODC, will be adopted soon after the completion of this hearing. Public hearing 2017. Once all 11 planning areas have been through this process and their relevant sections updated, a further draft of the POC document will be prepared by the commission and staff. All right. What I want the record to show, and for everyone to remember, again, as we all probably know through our planning sessions, that this plan is not a set of regulations or laws, and it should serve as a guide to future decisions regarding development and use of land, both public and private. The zoning regulations implement the policies and goals recommended in this plan. Recent examples of this process are the amendments to Section 28, relative to the recommendations made in section 1.715, which I mentioned was the bike ped master plan, which includes section 28.6A, bicycle parking standards, and section 28.11.5, pedestrian amenities. These amendments include specific design requirements for bike parking facilities and design requirements that facilitate safe pedestrian passage from public sidewalks to buildings and throughout the parking areas. Also, section 13.14 in our current plan, or in this proposed draft, but was approved, section 13.14 of our zoning regulations, transit-oriented development park, and section 21.16 of our current zoning regulations, transportation commerce park, are examples of zoning regulations crafted subject to the recommendations made in section 11.3.11, which I mentioned is in our current draft, the plan for the Commerce Drive area. A substantial example of the end product of this process that we're talking about is the mixed-use transit-oriented development being constructed currently on Commerce Drive adjacent to the Bigelow Tea facility. This development will produce residential and commercial uses envisioned by the Commerce Drive Station area planning process way back 2 or 3 years ago with all the planning meetings and the charrettes that we had. I think it's a great example of what this whole process kind of is the end product, and a lot of times we don't get to see that as soon as we have this time, although 3 years goes really fast, but I think that's a great example of what this process is all about and what it can accomplish. Last thing I'll do right now, real quick, is I just want to, one of our requirements was to make a referral to the Regional Planning Agency. I just want to read what the response was. This is from MetroCog. We are in receipt of the Town of Fairfield's draft plan of conservation and development for 2016 as per Connecticut General Statutes 8-23. The Connecticut Metropolitan Council of Governments reviewed this proposed draft plan. Per our cover letter, or your cover letter, I'm reading their statement, we understand that this is the first phase of the PO update. The town of Fairfield will begin to examine the development policies and goals in Chapter 2 of the plan after adoption of this version. Thus, our review has been limited to Chapter 1, Community Conditions and Projections. The demographic, housing, local economy, and land use conditions detailed in Chapter 1 of the Fairfield POCD are consistent with those of the MetroCog Regional POCD. Reconnect 1 region adopted just December 17, 2015, with Frank, both Mr. Wagner and myself were involved in a lot of their planning sessions and involved in the ultimate drafting of this section of this town section in that regional plan. Furthermore, the discussion of the town's transportation system, including the Fairfield Bicycle and Pedestrian Master Plan, aligns with the conditions described in the regional POCD. We look forward to the town's update of Chapter 2 development policies and are willing to assist with this review as needed. Please do not hesitate to contact us. And that was Brian Bodali, Executive Director. With that, Mr. Chairman, that's my brief overview of what our process is to this point and what's in front of you. And you'll say Mr. Went and myself are available for any questions anybody would have.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thanks very much for that overview. Really appreciate that. I'll just say that the Section 1 that is revised in this draft is the result of substantial effort. It's really not just a cut and paste of census data and the like. There are various substantive sections that were really designed through the process that we went through with the MetroCog and the development of the regional POCD. Mr. Devanchik and I were the town's appointed Fairfield representatives to the subcommittee that studied the various data and policies and procedures and such. We attended meetings in Bridgeport and participated in the development of that plan. We then culled from that regional effort that items that were related to Fairfield and then worked with MetroCog to develop a revision to this chapter. And so I just want to thank you for your time and effort in that regard. It was not insubstantial, and proud of the result here. I'm also looking forward to the next phase of this process, where we can engage with community groups, homeowners associations, business groups and representatives to undertake review of the policies for each individual area of our town. We've heard from time to time in the public hearings on some zone change issues, or even in subdivision applications where residents will take issue with the way that either our regulations are structured or various portions of the POCD that they don't think accurately reflect what the community wants for their part of town and what their vision is for how future development should occur. And this is the opportunity now for residents to engage in the process, participate, and drive either change, if that's what we want, or the status quo, if that's what we want. And so I look forward to it. It's going to take time. You know, we've got quite a bit of work ahead of us. But, you know, over the coming months, we're going to get those scheduled as quick as we can. And I think we're going to do, you know, some of the more substantive areas in isolation. So maybe like for the designed, the center design district, you know, that will be the only one on for like an evening or a public hearing. And maybe for some of the residential areas, we might have, you know, 2 or 3 on for a public hearing. But there'll be plenty of advance notice, and you know, we're going to actively and affirmatively reach out to you know, various members of the public and community groups and the like to try to solicit this engagement. So I would urge everyone to support, you know, the revision and the process. So with that, I'll throw it open to any comments anybody might have or questions.
I have a
Yeah.
question, actually.
And this is the public hearing. We got.
Yep.
We'll debate this in executive session when it comes on next meeting for our, you know, our discussion and vote. But I was actively engaged in the process, so I figured I'd throw my hat into the ring there.
I just have a question for Mr. Bonchik. I was reading this, and I went through Chapter 1. It is very good, and it's got lots of great information that I think we can refer to in the future as we go back. Just a simple question about what is proposed. 1.7.15, the bike and pedestrian plan. It was my understanding that was presented to us already by the Bike and Pedestrian Committee.
Correct.
And we actually voted on that.
Yes, we did.
Are the words in this the same as what we approved there? It's just
Yes, they are.
It's just an incorporation. And the
Right.
same with the Commerce Area Drive Area study. That was a multi-year study of one section, one of the 11, that was completed in 2011, or we voted on 2000. Is that the same as what we voted on there?
Part of the bundling that I mentioned, and what it kind of brought us to this point where we thought it was, the commission felt it was important to kind of approve or bundle it and approve it today, was,
Yeah.
that was one section. If you look at the Commerce Drive section actually in the second portion of that, that section is exactly what we approved in 2011. Same thing with the section that has the bike and ped information, and that was the master plan that was also presented to us and approved
Right.
by this commission.
So we actually approved adding it to the master plan back a couple of
Again-
years ago, but now there's just formally putting it into the new 2016 version.
Yeah, again, what we felt, if you remember last, that now is probably a good time because we wanted to update the first section, get that snapshot with all the updated census information. Otherwise, we thought it'd be a good time also to bundle the rest of it, to kind of make it, up at this point, it was just a bunch of copies that we had.
Yeah.
This kind of puts it together for us. And something like, as you mentioned too, the first part of it is important up-to-date information that will help us in our review of the second section.
So this proposal, we could actually, if so approved, we could this would be published
Oh,
as
absolutely.
the 2016 plan of the town of Fairfield, and we would know that Chapter 1 is complete, these 2 other sections were recently complete, and as the chairman said, this is the work that we have to do still on the development policies by the neighborhoods and the planning goals and really Chapters 2.
Once you approve this draft, it will become our 2016 Plan of Conservation Development. It will be sent up to the state of Connecticut. We will establish that date now. Our date right now is 2011 because of the work we did on Commerce Drive. It will be 2016, and then, of course, I think that the process, and I might have mentioned it quickly, as we do review each of the individual neighborhoods and policies that are coming up in the next couple sections, we'll do that on a case-by-case basis. Probably part of the process would be, after reviewing that, would have an executive session, maybe approve that section. And then once that's done, through all 11, and then whatever other sections we need to cover, we'll have one final, like this, one final hearing to again bundle everything that we've kind of agreed upon and have another approval.
Okay, one other question, I'm sorry, and it's off topic because it's about the sections we're not being asked to consider now. Is that okay? I just confused on one thing on Chapter 2, and this is actually one of the few things that actually is before my time, because we had a plan that was published, approved in 2000.
Correct.
And that was a huge effort with like 11
Years.
people on a planning
Took
committee, a
years.
multi-year effort. And I always thought, well, that's the 2000 version. I've always walked around with that version. Just at the beginning of this, you mentioned like it talks about the 1979. Are some of these policies still from 1979, like they weren't changed in 2000?
No, what's important about the 79 plan is that kind of set the outline of what you have in front of you.
Of the sections of
Right,
town?
the section.
Okay.
Format.
Okay.
Yeah, the 2000 plan kind of used the format
Yeah.
of the 1997 plan.
Okay.
79. There may be some recommendations in there that are similar, but if I remember, and I know Jim and I both well remember,
Yeah.
the process for the 2001, that each word was reviewed
Okay.
and approved. So, yeah, I think what's significant again about the 79 plan is that it kind of set the format.
Okay, but yeah, it was all, and I assume even if we go through a firm process, there's some policies that could have been from 1960, that still may be a good planning policy.
Correct.
And then, but the plan will be to look at all of them in all the areas of town.
Absolutely.
That's right. And I'll add one thing to that, another thing to that. You know, the planning goals speak to substantive areas around the town that are not directly tied to a particular community, like environment and ecology, community appearance, housing. But one thing that I note that's missing as a section, not that it's not touched upon, is energy, right? There's been some development of, you know, alternative energy for the town offices, solar panels, etc. You know, through this process, we may consider adopting another or changing the different sections of our overall planning goals for the town. There may be, you know, sufficient input and engagement by the community to present, you know, suggestions for us to develop something like that, or
Absolutely.
change other aspects of it.
Great opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions? Yes, Mr. Francis.
I just got some questions. This is my first time through it. When housing permits, does every, when a home is demolished and a new one is built, there's a new housing permit issued, or?
Yes.
Okay, so you can't just, I was wondering about if all the permits meant new homes, but they don't necessarily. Many of them could be replacements.
Yeah, most of the
Okay.
home, well, in the last couple of years, most of the home permits were for redevelopment
Yeah,
of homes. But yes, the answer to that is yes.
okay. And on page 4, the census data is from 2007. It was developed by this Rodriguez and Company. Does that mean he's using the 2000 census?
No, well, it may, I'm not sure about that particular graph, but the bulk of the census information was all brought up to date under the 2010
Yeah,
census.
you would think so.
Which chart are you looking at?
Page 4, the population, which is growing slightly, although not as high as it was in
Actually, I didn't really
05.
check that. There may be a
Yeah.
little revision in that.
Okay,
the-
yeah,
the-
because you'd want to make sure they use the 2010.
Well, the chart on page 4
If you look, there's a little discrepancy, I think, between those
reflects
two
to
charts.
2030.
I would go to
Right.
2010.
Just a reference to look at the bottom, it says he publishes.
Yeah, but if he did the study in 07, as is footnoted, he must have used the 2000 data extrapolated.
What might mention is that estimate is probably maybe based on that organization's findings as opposed to utilizing the 2000 census. They might have worked off that, but I got to 2007 for them. But there is a 2010 from the U.S. Census Bureau for the population projections.
Right. Well, all of the rest of the charts, that is a chart reflecting the projected population, but
Right.
the next chart on page 5 shows the changes through 2010 based on U.S. Census Bureau data, as well as the next chart on page 6, which shows age population through 2010. That references the report from 2007 as well, which, you know, I don't know, but that might be partially where the 2010 census took its data, right?
It's possible.
I'm not sure.
We could double check with Greater
Okay.
Bridgeport on that.
And
But all of this, I mean, I can confirm this myself, all of the data that's reflected in this report was developed by and vetted by MetroCog for the purposes of the regional master plan. So I am confident that all of the data is the best and most up-to-date data that is available to us to do this update.
I think that's correct.
The best way to say it. So while some might reference the 2010 census, that census itself may pull data from earlier studies, because you can't do a census in 1 year. It's just,
For the projections too, I'm sure they use other criteria.
It takes them 2 years to even come out with the data.
right.
In page 28, could you clarify on the very last paragraph that they're still talking about the Fairfield Center station? I think they are, but they keep going town center station, town center, and then in this 28 at the bottom, the last paragraph, I'm sure they are, but I think we should clarify it because it's going Fairfield, and then it goes on to the other 2 Fairfield stations. And page 18, we'll probably want to delete the reference to GE. Sadly. All right, that's all I have.
Where's the reference to GE on page 18?
In the middle somewhere. The traffic data was my favorite, though.
Okay, thanks. So tweaks like that, and there may be other typos or other issues that we might want to tweak or wordsmith, I think are best presented in our executive session when we're discussing whether to approve this proposal after we go through this public hearing. So if anyone else has stuff like that, make note and bring it to the executive session when we discuss this.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, Commissioner Kennelly.
Mr. Chairman, as a matter of procedure tonight, normally you're fairly focused on the idea that any public comment is germane to what's before us. It does sound like what we're looking at tonight in terms of a public hearing process is this phase 1. That is to look at the value and the validity of the data provided through the process that you and Mr. Devanchik were part of, incorporating these 2 sections that we spent extensive time and also public hearings on previously, Bike and Ped and Commerce Drive. If we are going to be doing public comment tonight, will we be asking the public to limit their comment to this element now as opposed to beginning? I can imagine some of them wanting to begin the process tonight at the other 11 areas of town, and my only concern is that we may want to do that. We may want to ask them to hold their fire on those other areas outside of this as much as they want to get going, and understand that there will come a time for Center District or something.
Sure.
You know, I mean, we can certainly take notes, but we may have to go back 3 or 4 months from now to go back and look what they said as a result, rather than just stay focused.
Right, we talked about this in-house, and one of the recommendations I would make to the board is because they've made the opportunity to come out here to the hearing, if they want to make comments and essentially kind of recommend to the board the types of issues that you might want to take up, I think that's fine. I don't know that there's going to be any. I agree with you that you'll say it'll be more intensely reviewed when we get to the specific areas. But the fact that they're here, if they just want to if they make recommendations for something for you to include in our review, I don't particularly have any problem with that.
That's not the concern. I'm just more concerned if there's like more elaborate thoughts about one particular area of town or another that just kind of hold fire so we're all on the same page at the time. But, it's, whatever. It's up to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Yeah, we will go forward to public comment as soon as we're finished with the presentation here from Mr. Devanchik and our dialogue here. I don't intend to limit any public comment. I mean, there aren't that many people in the room tonight, to be honest with you. I don't think that I want to send the message that we're limiting any public input at all. I will say that we all should be aware that we're not quite there yet in terms of specific analysis around specific communities in town and so forth. But if there are suggestions, as Mr. Devanchik has mentioned, of different issues that we want to keep our eye out, flag this, flag that, I'm all ears. All right? Does that make sense to you? Yeah. Okay. Anyone else? I mean, we'll take it as it comes, but I usually have a pretty good hand on keeping things in line. Anyone else have any questions or comments for Mr. Devanchik? All right. Well, thank you very much. And at this time, I'll put it open to public comment. If any members of the public would like to be heard on this item.
Jan Reber, Beaumont Street, and I am going to limit my comments only to section 1. I think that's really all I came prepared for. I have a handout, some pages from the Greenwich plan, which I'd like to give out. I could have brought pages from Westport, from many other towns, which I think cover areas in their first section that Fairfield should have covered and has not. It happens that Greenwich's plan was facilitated by Glenn Calder at Planometrics, who I think a lot of you know. And he's put together for them a very good plan of conservation and development that I think covers areas that really should be in Fairfields. The title of your section 1 is Community Characteristics. There are many community characteristics that have simply ignored in your section 1. For example, where are the water resources? Where are the beaches? Where are the wetlands? Where's the enumeration of the flood zones? You'll find all that in Greenwich's plan. You'll find all that in many plans. Those are important community characteristics. Fairfield has over 9,000 acres of open space, yet in this plan they're lumped together with parks. An open space is not a park. We have over 9,000 acres. They should be enumerated. You'll see in the Greenwich plan they're enumerated on a separate map. Overall, it seems as though the conservation part of conservation and development has been very much ignored in your first section. It really doesn't reflect the soul of Fairfield. It reads like a compilation of statistics by faceless bureaucrats at a regional or state level. On the housing area, for instance, with Greenwich and every other town that I've looked at, we have the average home price in the beginning section. How much does it cost to live in Fairfield? How many apartments are there in Fairfield? How many rental units are there? What's the range of home prices? None of that stuff's included. It is in every other report I've looked at other than Fairfield's. Every single one of them. I think all that stuff should be in section 1. In the two charts, figures 18 and 19. This is on traffic now. The total estimated person trips by neighborhood and by place have no source. Really wonder where this information, which seems to me to be kind of unusual, came from. They're the only charts I could locate in here that are not listed by source, and I think the information in them is questionable. On the school enrollment page, which is table 1K, you have no projection of future school enrollment, which is an important planning characteristic. You have future population of Fairfield, nothing about the future of the school population. A critical planning issue that's ignored in this section. Police protection. There's no public safety statistics. There's pages of data on traffic, yet the traffic situation in Fairfield that we're seeing developing is really not covered well. We know how much traffic there is on 95, and that's repeated about 10 times in this section. But there's very little about things such as the trend in Fairfield towards where there's congestion on the post road, we're getting increasing secondary and further tertiary traffic in the morning and the evening off of those roads. None of that kind of thing is covered here. There's no statistic on accidents. Again, an important planning characteristic, almost every time that you receive a zoning application and there's a traffic study, you get information on local number of accidents. The overall accident data is not included here, which it really should be. According to this, 17% of Fairfield's roads, as it defines the roads here, are overly heavy. But there's no data on how much they're overly heavy or what roads they are. Again, the data here is incomplete, it's limited, and it's not useful in the form that it's in. I think that's it. I hope you'll look at Greenwich. I hope you'll read Westport's. I hope you'll read some of the other plans from other towns, and you'll really see that this section 1 that you've presented is not the soul of Fairfield. It's not the character of the town at all. It's just a bunch of numbers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other members of the public wish to hear it?
Good evening. My name is Bud Morton, and I live on Sasko Hill Road. And first, I just want to express thanks to all of you for the terrific job you do on behalf of the town and the enormous amount of time that you have to put in. This is a very, very excellent and professional commission. With that as background, and to Mr. Kennelly's point about the relevance of comments to Section 1, I would say that the relevance of the comments I'm about to make to Section 1 are that Section 1 is all about the past. It's data that may help us understand where we are, but it doesn't speak to the more important question of where we want to go with the town of Fairfield. And so I have two major points that I tried to convey in an email that I sent to you earlier, and I'm happy to accept that as read rather than reading it into the record. But the two main points there are basically that it's, I think, extremely important that this commission coordinate its efforts with those of the town to create its first strategic plan. And as I'm sure all of you are aware, First Selectman Tetro has committed to that process of creating a strategic plan. And indeed, some of the issues that Mr. Reber just raised are in some ways more relevant to the strategic plan than perhaps to the plan of conservation and development. But the two are so integral that they're inseparable, right? That you really can't create the plan of conservation and development that you should and want to create without a strategic foundation of understanding where the town really wants to go. And so that's point number one. We really need to coordinate with the strategic planning process. And the point number two is to merely encourage you all to in some ways think big and not think incrementally, right? That there is a tendency to feel that maybe things are okay, and that if we just kind of tweak, to use Chairman Wagner's term, around the edges of our zoning and our subdivision regulations, that, you know, we'll be fine. I would merely encourage you to consider the possibility that that will not be sufficient, that the work that we do on the strategic plan ultimately will demonstrate that there is a need for much more dramatic change. And in my email to you, I gave you just one example, not one to which I can pound the table and say is indeed perfect for the future of Fairfield, but just one example to get you thinking along the lines of things that can be done that would change the economic profile and future of the town of Fairfield. And I would close only by observing that that may be necessary because the environment in which all of those historical data were created, not only for Fairfield, but for the state of Connecticut and for the nation, was an environment in which the rising tide of post-war prosperity basically lifted all ships. And so there was really much less need, I believe, for really good planning than there is today, when, as I think we all agree, we're facing much more challenging economic circumstances going forward. Not just in the town of Fairfield, but also surely in the state of Connecticut, where the problems have been widely publicized, and indeed for the nation as a whole. So I'd be happy to respond to any questions anyone may have with regard to the email I sent, but As I promised, I hope to see you later when you get around to talking about Fairfield Center, and I hope at that time to have a great deal more of specific ideas that relate to the possibilities of what we could do there.
Excellent. Thank you. And yes, we did receive your email, and I know that many of us, if not all of us, have read it, and appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks.
Hi, everybody. Alyssa Israel, 679 Roland Road. Thank you so much for including the bicycle and pedestrian master plan in this section of the POCD. I'm not sure if the committee, the new bicycle and pedestrian committee, knows that. I'll make sure they know. I don't think a lot of people know about all the work you've been doing since May. And I would ask humbly that maybe you hold off on voting on any section of the plan until maybe till the end, when you've heard more of the public and heard from each of the neighborhoods, and then just approve the document all at once. Do you mind if I ask why you might want to approve a certain section first?
Well, it was a substantial effort in collaboration with MetroCog, the regional planning agency, to update this data and the detail about our town. Notwithstanding Mr. Reber's comments, which are well taken, there are other documents which speak to some of the issues that he raised, such as school enrollment, and the planning for our schools is in the Board of Education plan. The housing prices and the mix of housing units and such is in an affordable housing plan, which the town studied and so forth. The detail that's here is meant to, as I think Mr. Morton suggested, reflect where we've been and the data about our town and that kind of thing. I think it is important to take the opportunity to compile the other parts of the work that has been done, like the bike and ped plan and Commerce Drive, and stitch all of this together into an update which we should approve for no other purpose than to have an update to our POCD, which I think is sorely needed, so that everyone has a document now which is going to go to this next phase where we can make further updates to that section 1. In the context of a next phase, there may be things that come out in that process, such as Mr. Reber suggested, an open space section. I mentioned that, for example, there are other sections that are noticeably absent. I mentioned energy as an example. I was doing some research about this, and I learned that there are certain towns in our country that now require, for any new construction, that a certain percentage of solar panels be installed on residential units. And in some towns, that's worked really well, and in other towns, it's not worked that well. But in no town where that has been required have there been any complaints by builders and homeowners and such that the requirement was a detraction. It didn't. And so that's something that we should consider. Maybe not. Mm-hmm. But it's something that we could consider incorporating into an overview. Maybe it's in section 1. Maybe it's in section 3. Not sure. But at least for the moment, we have momentum, and we've got a completed update to section 1 with updated census information. And I personally think it's important that we take the opportunity to get an update and move forward with the process. I hope that answers your question. Yeah, Commissioner Barrett?
Can I comment on that too,
Sure.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
Just for
Why not?
Commissioner.
This is kind of an
Another
not
benefit I see is that, again, the question I asked Mr. Dimaggio, I was kind of just a little confused on this update because we had 2 sections that extensive work was done by a committee that you were on, and then our Commerce Drive study, and I always thought well, those are part of the master plan, we approved them already, but this, gets it formally so there'd be just for documentation, whereas it's a published document, if somebody looks outside, they don't have to cobble together different sections, so I think there's some benefit in just kind of like having a new overall version just for documentation purposes, and then there's a whole planning process to go on after that. So again, when we say we're approving that, I was just confused, like, wait a minute, we already approved both of those sections, but now this will be in this, I guess this is approving it to be in the 2016 version of this plan, if approved, would have those there.
Comprehensive update.
So it's a comprehensive update.
So you can make changes anyway along the way through 2017 per state statute. It's
Yeah.
not a big deal.
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly, but just to get I think that their goal here now is to get everything that we've approved or all of this new data into a new approved version, at least that's the proposal, as I understand, before us.
Right.
But,
So, as an example of the purpose for what we're doing here tonight and approving this consolidated update, so we go out to a public notice and we say, okay, on October 14th, we're going to have a public hearing on the Center Design District for this next phase that we're talking about. Well, hopefully, a business group that's interested in participating in that is going to go down to the town hall and ask Mr. Devanchik or Mr. Wendt for a copy of the current POCD so that they have a document to sort of drive the effort. Well, now they'll have the recently updated version
Yeah.
with all the different things that we've done over time put together in one nice package, and we all can be on the same page about what is included, what's not. Like you said, we approved that Commerce Drive a while back, but if somebody just went down or had asked for somebody else for a copy of the POCD, maybe they'd get that addendum, maybe they wouldn't, and now it'll be there.
Sounds good. Thank you for answering my question. I guess I was formulating my thoughts as I was hearing everybody and some great comments from the two gentlemen who came up before me. I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to read this in detail, but my initial thoughts are that an executive summary would be a really good thing for people who don't want to read the whole thing. And just something describing the trends that you're seeing in town, quantitative and qualitatively. I mean, you all know what's happening and what you've been seeing. I mean, something new is that you're getting marijuana applications. That's, you're probably getting a lot of other things that I'm not aware of. Just trends.
Well, we only
that are-
had one of those.
Only one, okay, I thought there were two, and it was denied.
Was it two?
The second one was denied immediately because the first one got denied the same night.
Oh, so it was one night, sorry, there were two in one night.
The second one never made it to a public hearing.
Got it.
Ran out the door.
Anyway, sorry,
Anyway,
I didn't mean to.
Oh, that's okay. I'm just thinking, something describing what the POCD is, how this commission uses it, like a real educational executive summary describing, what is the value of this document, because I've actually forgotten, and I'd love to know, and, to be educational and brief. How is this document used, what's in it, and what are the trends we're seeing. I was surprised to see, frankly, that we're not growing that much going into 2030. I thought I just mentioned, too, I don't know if you know this, but I just learned recently that census data includes university students. You knew that, okay, I didn't know that. So there's probably I don't know how many university students we have in town, 5,000 or 6,000, maybe more, that are included in that number.
If you're over 18 and you are a resident for more than 6 months, you're counted as an adult in the census.
You're counted, so. So that's just a suggestion. Another thing is I'd love to see more visuals and pictures of the types of development we would like to see. I just feel like very few people are going to read the 100 pages here, and if we can just show them the development that this commission likes and that people like and what we want to see more of, I think that would go a long way. And I had some comments about the shore area, but I guess we're going to get to that down the road. Which
If you have some thoughts on it, I know. See. Sure.
Again, Joe Devanchuk. Yeah, we have, one of our referrals went to the state DEP, and they asked the same thing about our final section, the coastal area management. Yes, that is one of the sections that need to be updated. They understand that. We send them a copy of our, explaining to them that, we're just doing the first section, and that the other sections will come later, a later time. They said thank you, and needless to say, they said they'll be involved. They'll have comments at the time when we initiate that review. But there's no question, yeah, that section needs to be updated as well.
Great. Thank you.
And just as a matter of process and public outreach, which I'm so happy to hear that you're doing, I'm thinking just a survey monkey survey online that you can just get public comment as much as possible. It could be anonymous. You could ask for people's names. I can help you design the survey if you'd like. I'm pretty good at that. I just feel that, people don't come out, they don't understand what the POCD is, and I think you would just get some really great qualitative data from people if you ask some basic questions that would be really useful as you write this and think about it. Just a thought. So,
Okay. Well, thank you.
thank you for your time.
All right. Any other member of the public wish to be heard? Nobody else left in the room. All right, very good. Mr. Devanchik, anything else?
No, sir.
All right. With that, I will close the public hearing on this item, and I will adjourn the meeting.